ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Oh, it's time to go. But there's normally another jingle after that, isn't there? Isn't there? Anyway, welcome to a very confused start, to tell you the truth. And the reason it's so confused is because the system is playing up and none of us could hear any of the music. And so we've all been getting cross with each other about the fact that we can't hear each other and we can't hear the music. But sort of you are welcome. And so don't think there's any tension in the team at all. We deny it. You're so welcome. My moment of the week is that I've been on 12-hour days for about a fortnight and I'm absolutely knackered. So if I nod off during one of the longer talks, somebody give me a nudge and wake me up. Let's just say hello to the team. Hi, Laura. You're as tired as I am, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I am. But hello, I'm still here.
Sam, you've been phone banking, or was that your moment of the week?
No. Phone banking is my life now, John.
You were Sam was sharing her ideas on phone banking, which I just dare not do at all, and so I was very, very interested. I hate the phone, and I was really interested in what she was saying. Stuart, hiya, are you phone? But you're a real phone bank expert, aren't you?
I haven't done a lot of late. I mean, I've got some experience of it, but I need to do more. So everybody remind me.
To that man, he's too humble. During the pandemic, he has been keeping tabs on a whole range of people in the community and in the party, and he's just the loveliest. Well done. And Paul is there struggling with the technology. You can see. Anyway, the joy of today's evening is that I'm going to have to sing the jingles because we can't make the jingles work. So my evening is made. Here we go. The moment of the week. Okay, thank you, everybody. Laura, for your applause, I'll let you go first. What's your moment of the week?
Thank you. My moment of the week this week was on Saturday. Was part of, I guess what you could call it, an installation maybe, or a photography project, whichever way you want to describe it. What we did was, I don't know if you saw, in fact, we talked about this last week, when the Women's Banner Group invited a load of women to put the messages up. Those messages were then put onto dresses that the women donated, and they were hung up all over Durham. The city centre of Durham, to just as a visual display of the message we were trying to get across. And we ended up getting them all up on a washing line in front of the cathedral, and it was really beautiful because there'd already been a vigil at the cathedral, and all the flowers and the candles and everything were all still out. So we hung all the dresses up and they had all the messages on, and there were people coming up and having a chat about what it was about. It started some really interesting conversations. The whole thing was really emotional, and it was just nice to be doing anything just to highlight the issues. So that was a really big deal, and it was a lovely sunny day, and it was just nice to be out of the house as well.
So good, because I saw the picture and I thought, who's hanging the washing out outside the cathedral and why? And so it was just there's a photo, and I thought, what on earth is going on here? So now I know. Absolutely brilliant. Well done, you. Thank you so much. Paul.
I'll go for our socialist think tank article in Left Horizons. Left Horizons is a bit of a left wing magazine. They're putting out some really good stuff at the moment. So support them. Have a look. Subscribe to them. Subscribe to the newsletter. It's free. They're just trying to put out some news, and big shout out to the left media that collaborate with one another, because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Well done. Thank you very much, Paul, for all you do. What you do on Socialist Think Tank is stunning. Right. I'm going to go for, by the way, what I'm going to do now, Tim Dredge. Oh, no, we'll see, Tim. We'll just wait. I'm going to do your moment of the week in a little while, but let's just make sure I'm not pinching it from either of these two. Stuart, moment of the week.
Yeah, I went out litter picking today, which was like 2 times in a week. And I got a dog waste bin installed in under a week, which was a huge success.
I'm very cross about that, Stuart.
Oh, yeah. I can make things happen.
The answer to me has been no for about 2 or 3 dog bins I've asked for. How did you do that? Who did you go through? Well done, you. Congratulations. So to all you people listening out there, if you can get a dog bin out of Durham County Council, you are a very special and clever person, because I'm damned if I can. Well done, Stuart. Stuart has also helped me litter picking Newton Aycliffe, and he's just a wonderful man in that respect as well. Finally, Sam, moment of the week.
So I bought some garden furniture, which is exciting because because the reason I've bought garden furniture is that I don't believe the government are going to be successful in getting us out of lockdown, and I'm not sitting in a bloody camping chair in my front yard all summer again. So I bought myself a net. And it also doubles up as because when we are doing our electioneering in May, we've had very strict guidance from the party. We've got to be outside and be distanced. So I'm going to be able to use it as like a leaflet drop-off pickup station as well. And it's red.
Saw the picture.
Yeah.
I'm going to just share a personal memory from many, many years ago when one of the members of the branch held a garden party in his back garden, and he had a gazebo there, and it was full of food. We all brought food, and it was a lovely, lovely time for the branch all getting together. Halfway through the afternoon, it started to pour down. So we all went and stood in his gazebo. There was no social distancing there, like this. And he had an industrial roll of cling film. So he attached it to that one side, and he just walked round and round the gazebo. And he trapped us all in with this industrial roll of cling film. And we all stood like that in the gazebo while it poured down, and had the most lovely afternoon. Tim Dredge says that his moment of the week is Ricky Tomlinson and the Shrewsbury 6, is it? Or the Shrewsbury, however many it was, picket line getting their justification after all this time. And well done, well done. Guilty my ass. Okay, let's here we go. Now it's time for the big story. The big story today is Graham Marsh, who was doubting me on the chat. No, your question is the big story. I'm going to start off with Sam. How should you vote in local elections? Person or party?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and it's not straightforward. Obviously, I will be voting for the Labour Party, and I'll be encouraging everybody to vote for the Labour Party where they can. But I understand that it is complicated, and actually, when it comes to councillors, some people can be very, very active in their community and not feel aligned to a political party, and I'm sure there are some very good independent councillors out there who are embedded in their local community. What you will often get when you are talking to voters is, I don't think the police and crime commissioner should be a political appointment. I don't think local councillors should be politically aligned because it should just be the right person for the job. What I will say is that, for example, me right there, just in the meeting before this one, I was talking about leaflets and campaign spend for my county council election, and I would not be able to spend that money on a campaign if it had to come out of my pockets. And I think we really have to not be so unfair to people to say that, you know, they should be able to pay for their elections themselves, which is what we're saying when we want people to all be independents. Political parties do create opportunities for people who might not be able to stand for political office in the first place, and that automatically sort of disenfranchises a lot of people. So we have to look at the position that political parties play in that, but also be aware of, if you are going to vote for an independent candidate, know them really well. Because if I got elected and then turned out to be a racist or anything else, then there could be complaints put in to the Labour Party about me, and I could be suspended from the Labour Party. You can't be suspended from being a councillor just for being a racist. It's incredibly difficult to remove a sitting councillor, even if they do have horrendously abhorrent views that they make publicly available. So that's what I'm saying. It's buyer beware. I call independent councillors like mystery box candidates, because you really don't know what you're getting in a lot of cases. Obviously, like I said, that's not for everyone. I just think you've got to work that extra little bit hard to know the candidate. Of course, the party tells you something about what that person stands for. So if you're voting for somebody because they're an active candidate, but they're a conservative, can't even say it, if they're a conservative, you just need to be aware of what that mindset means and what that set of ethics means for that person, because they're going to be voting on your leisure centres, your special educational needs provision, looking after your people in your community with extra health and care needs, kids who are in care, whether you need a swim baths or not, you know. So it does matter in the overarching scheme of things in terms of what you want your council to deliver. An independent councillor on their own is not going to be able to deliver big projects. They're not going to be able to change things. They're not going to be able to stop council tax going up. That's just not possible when they're up against the big political parties that have groups that vote together. So be realistic. If you just want a local councillor to be a really good local councillor who reports your dog bins and does litter picks, then that's fine. Know them well, find out who they are and what makes them tick, but be aware that they're not going to be able to deliver the big things that they might say they want to deliver on.
Thank you, Sam. That's smashing. Laura, if you and agree, by the way, if you go into the ballot box, okay, and sort of there's 3 Labour candidates there, as there are in my ward, and you know that 2 of them are good people, but one of them isn't so good, and there is an absolutely brilliant independent who you know to be a top class chap standing. Do you vote Labour, 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 or do you vote Labour, Labour, independent?
That feels like an unfair question. If you're a Labour Party member, you vote Labour, Labour, Labour. But it is difficult at council level, I think. I hate sort of like the US elections where it's all about persona and about a person, because a person doesn't make all the decisions. And I think in the council as well, if you have a big group like the Labour group, then it isn't about just one person as well. So um so ordinarily I would always say go for the group, go for Labour if you support Labour. And I encourage everybody to do that. But having said that, on a council level, um, if you know the candidates and you know who they are and you know what they want to achieve, then why shouldn't you vote for those people? I'm in a really privileged position because I'm a Labour Party member. I want everybody to vote Labour, and all my candidates, who I think are absolutely fantastic, just so happen to be Labour. So I'm not going to really fall into that trap, thankfully. But yeah, it is difficult, especially at council level, I think, when you just want to see stuff getting done, and you haven't really done yourself any favors by saying you can't get a dog poop in there, John, and Stuart just has to click his fingers and there's one there for him.
Yeah, he's just a special man. He's just a special man. Answering Graham Marsh, when you're a member of a party and you go to the county council, it's not so strict at town council level, but when you go to the county council, you're under what is called a whip. And sort of what happens is that when there's a decision, the Labour group, as a group of 70 councillors, as it is now, will talk and will decide how we're going to vote. And sometimes people disagree in that discussion, and some people will say, I don't agree with it, I want to do this, and other people want to do that, but you come to a joint decision, and sort of you accept that the group wisdom is greater than your own. And sort of you act as a group. And that's because it says on the back of our membership card that we believe by acting together, what is it? By our joint endeavour, we can achieve more than we can achieve alone. And that's what Sam was talking about. She was saying that, if you're going to change the council tax, if you're going to get a swimming bath built, then you can't do that on your own and try and persuade 126 people. But if you're in the Labour group, and you can persuade the Labour group to do it, then it will happen. And so sort of in a way, sort of people say, but you're giving away your independence, but you've got much more power to change things when you're a member of a group. And that's why we stick together in a group. It's very greatly criticised. You're not required to agree with it, that it's a good thing. That's just how it is for a Labour councillor. That's the answer to that question. Paul, the big thing is here, why should anybody vote for a party and not for the person?
Because a party is supposed to stand for shared values, so a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know every candidate. But if you know what the values of that party are, then you can go along and you can say, right, I'm going to vote for the people who have these values because I share them. I've shared values with them. Now, there are all sorts of different things, and my personal opinion is you vote how you want to vote. You vote how you want to vote. That's entirely your right. And if you wanted to change your mind and vote for someone else, then other than a party, then that is entirely up to you. I'll personally be back in the Labour Party, and as Laura said, we are privileged in that. If that person wasn't in the Labour Party and Labour weren't running, we'd be quite happy to vote for that person anyway, because they're excellent. However, I think when you're a part of the Labour Party, it might not be your preferred candidate gets selected, but if you've been part of that selection process, so you might have had a vote at your branch to say, actually, I would have preferred to support this candidate. And if your preferred candidate doesn't win, then you get behind the one, because that's how democracy works within the Labour Party. But we're seeing at the moment that might not necessarily be what is happening in the Labour Party, and members aren't being asked. So the whole point of being in the Labour Party is to be part of that internal democracy. So if the Labour Party want members to continue to back their candidates, then they will have to make sure that democracy occurs within the party. And I think that is a really, really huge point here, because if the Labour leadership continue to impose candidates without asking the membership what they think, then when does that snap? When does that loyalty snap? Because every single Labour Party, I would expect them to go out and vote Labour. I would. But then I would expect every single Labour Party member to have been part of the process that got that candidate selected. So you've got that double thing. You've got that's a great candidate. They've gone through the internal democratic processes. I actually think that's one of the advantages of being in a good political party where people select people, because, the party members have backed that person as well. There's been a bit of a layer of accountability before that person gets to the ballot box, whereas an independent might not have had that scrutiny, might not have had that. So that's probably the strength of voting for someone who's within a certain party. If that isn't part of the process anymore, then where do Labour Party members draw the line and say, it's nothing to do with me, this candidate's been like bussed in from London or whatever, or some, that, not in this particular case, but that could happen in the future. When does that link between the community and the candidate disappear? And I think that's something that the Labour Party has to be very, very, very careful about, because they are going to lose sight of what they're actually supposed to be for. So in these local elections, I have been part of the scrutiny around the candidates being selected. It's been an extremely fair process. Well done to everyone involved. I'll be backing those candidates, and I think that's only right.
Tim Dredge, open selection, only way. That's fine. What I will say, Vonnie came on and said, what do you do if you have a real dingbatter who you hate? It was the Labour chappie. And sort of the answer is that I would say if you're Labour, you need to hold your nose and vote, because when they get to County Hall, the group is a process of control of that person. They can't be a dingbat. They have to go with the group, and that's your reassurance. That's the reassurance that you're not electing an individual. You're electing a Labour member who will stick with the group and be made to stick with the group and do the kind of things you expect a Labour member to do. And that's your protection and your guarantee, in a way. It's when it says, when you see that little rose and it's got the word Labour underneath, that's your guarantee that there is some kind of control over this person and the way they behave. They are accountable to it. I think that's a good thing. Stuart, how are you standing in your ward? Are you sort of going and saying, here am I, Labour, 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 vote for me because I'm Labour? Or are you going at it and you're saying, vote for me because I'm just the nicest, most reliable man anybody could actually ever want to be their county council? How are you selling yourself, party or person?
I'm both. But I'll invert the situation. Like in the last week, I was actually, I want to say attacked maybe on a couple of the community groups by some independent councillors that wanted to string a narrative together, and they attacked me on my party rather than, me as a person. And at the time, I just completely engaged it as, the candidate, as the person. And if anything, it did wonders for my credibility, because I came over as a reasonable person, somebody you could actually communicate with. So I think it's important that members of the community actually speak with candidates. Even if you're completely intent on voting for a party or against a party, speak with the candidates, get to know them, understand them a little bit better. Stuff comes out in the wash, doesn't it, when you have a talk with someone?
I mean, that's one of the problems with this election, Stuart, isn't it? That we can't stand on the doorstep and talk to people. The opportunities to speak to the residents are very, very few and far between.
My wife actually, she doesn't get political all that often, and she actually got involved, and she was getting at one point getting more likes than I was. So maybe there's a candidate for the future. Well,
people don't like husband and wife teams, but very often it is the case that because you're so similar and you love each other and you go along to the meetings together, you both become engaged together. And it's when you get engaged, you can't stop yourself. One of my big things is name recognition. I think my view is that people don't vote party or person. I think when they get in the booth, they go down the list and they think, oh, I know that one, yeah. Oh, that lady there, I've heard that name before. He's in the newspapers, and sort of, and I have this awful fear that all these persons and principles is actually, it's at the end of the day, it comes down to name recognition. Some lovely comments. Have you been clocking these lovely comments on the chat? Sort of, which I'm sure that sound will pick up later. I think we all want to see the size of your strawberry plants, Anne Willis. Sort of, if you can put a photograph on Facebook, we'll all be pleased to see that. Right. Okay. Now, here we go. I can't do this one, Paul, because if I can't sing. If I do the drums, can you do the singing? Okay, I'm going to do the drums here now. Actually, Laura, can you do the drums?
No.
I do the drums.
No.
Because I've heard it all before. There you go. That'll do.
Okay, there we go. I thought you were excellent there, Paul. I want some likes for Paul on the
Thanks,
chat.
I'm here all week, unfortunately.
So you'll be, and I'm also getting to the. Have you noticed I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be able to headbang really effectively? So anyway, here we go. Labour calls for a full COVID public inquiry starting in June. Paul, tell us all about this. What's going on?
I think you've just explained it there. So Labour have called for a public inquiry starting in June about COVID. So obviously we can all see that the way the COVID pandemic has been handled. I think it's about 26% of people are now professing that they have any faith in the government. People know the government have absolutely botched this. People know that they've handled it absolutely appallingly. And there isn't much support for them out there. I'm going to get onto Poland in a little while because I find it really interesting that they're polling so well given that. So maybe that's why Labour are calling for this public inquiry. Maybe it's down to Poland. But if the Labour Party want a public inquiry into the way this has been handled. Now, I'm not really 100% sure how necessary it is. We know that through the courts, through is it Julian Morn, who's been doing a lot of work through is it called the Good Justice Project? It may be. I may be wrong. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. And they've been handing out contracts to people like Matt Hancock's friend from the pub and things, where he had a picture of his pub on the wall and he's given him a contract to make test tubes when he's never been near a test tube. He's a pub landlord. There's all these, it is clearly corrupt. They've clearly stated in the first place that they were going to send people into care homes. Like, that was on their initial documentation they sent out. We will discharge people with COVID into care homes to recover. And, well, then they denied that they did that. And, do we really need a public inquiry to tell us what we already know? Let's look at the history of public inquiries. Hillsborough, there was a public inquiry into that. Years and years and years of struggle, and eventually those people got some form. It wasn't justice, but they got some form of recognition that they'd been treated badly. What happened? The person in charge of that operation was acquitted in court afterwards. Chilcot, Tony Blair, found to have misled Parliament over weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Did anything happen to him? He's still saying that he did the right thing. So we didn't really see anything come out of that. And the history of public inquiries are just like this. They do these public inquiries. It captures the public imagination. They talk about it a lot, and then nothing happens. So what is the outcome here? What do you want to do? And I have a little phrase that I always use to myself. I was like, what do you hope to achieve by doing this? And I think people would really do well to use that phrase all the time. What do I hope to achieve by doing this? What do Labour hope to achieve by calling for this? Now, they haven't really opposed the government throughout the pandemic, and it's a bit of a surprise that they didn't do that, because they did some awful things, and yet there's been no opposition really, and there's been a lot of backing for the government, and Labour are now in a position where I don't know, maybe they're clutching at straws a little bit and saying, well, if we call for this public inquiry, it makes them look bad. But just oppose it at the time. I think they were worried about being called Captain Hindsight all the time. I think that rattled Keir Starmer, and that Captain Hindsight thing. He's like, I'm not going to try and predict what's going to happen anymore. And then, I don't know, I think it's just a little bit messy. Now, Labour in the polls are really, really, really disastrously lagging behind. We were told that if you got rid of anyone but Jeremy Corbyn, would be 20 points ahead. We've just had a pandemic where 125,000 people have died because of, in my view, a really poor response to this pandemic, and my heart goes out to everyone who's lost any loved one whatsoever. I've lost people who, not in my family, thankfully to this point, touch wood, but people that I care about have been lost, and everyone who's lost someone, I feel absolutely dreadful for. I think it could have been handled so much better. Schools again have been opened unsafely, in my opinion. You're about to see a surge. You've seen Boris Johnson this week saying, it's going to be Europe's fault if we all get another wave now, because he's just opened schools and he knows another wave's coming. And we're in this situation where Labour are now saying, let's have a public inquiry to try and maybe get something back in the polls. That's what I think. We are in serious bother if a government that has only the confidence of 26% of people has a double-digit lead. And Keir Starmer's own personal ratings are absolutely appalling. They are, given the easy ride relatively he's had in the media compared to Jeremy Corbyn, his personal ratings are super poor. So they're trying to get this back, I think.
Can I just stop you there? Because, I mean, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But Starmer was in an impossible situation, wasn't it? Because if he'd have opposed, I think the argument was that if he had opposed in the way you had suggested, then at the time, people would have been absolutely furious with the Labour Party for undermining the National Front, sort of undermining the national intent, sort of causing trouble at the wrong time. And was it not a judgment that sort of Labour had to be sort of seen to be supportive of the country, not necessarily the government? And beyond that, I think that I can agree with you. Now, what it's trying to do is
signposts and weather vanes.
Loving the government. Sorry?
It's signposts and weather vanes, right? Okay, so I have not changed my opinion throughout this entire thing. I knew what I believed and I knew what I thought should be happening. And we've seen at every single turn. They weren't listening to signs. They could have constructively opposed at all times, held them to account. That's what an opposition's for. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you ignoring your own scientific advice? Why are you saying one thing and then doing another? Why are you defending Dominic Cummings? And really, there was no real opposition to any of that there. But then Nicola Sturgeon does something this week where she's found to have misled Parliament, and she's been found to have accidentally misled Parliament, whereas Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock have both been found to have deliberately misled Parliament. He calls for her resignation, but he doesn't call for theirs. I don't understand this. It's almost like they've said, they've won the last election, so they're right. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to copy off them, so we're right. That's what it feels like to me. Just be yourself. Just have your own opinion and go for it. If I'd have been in the position where I was leading the opposition, I would have done what I personally thought was right, and I would have asked, and that would have been to ask members. That would have been to ask other people around me and ask for the opinion of other Labour Party members. That would have been what I did, and I don't know why we didn't do that.
Two things,
and I would have listened to trade unions as well.
We've
that was
lost
the other
your
thing.
sound, so I can't hear what you're saying. The second thing is that, judging by the comments, sort of not only does everybody agree with you, but they would rather you were the leader of the Labour Party. Sam, what's your comment about this? Are you fully behind the Labour Party, Colin, or are you with Leanne Powell, who says it's a waste of time?
Well, I mean, I think Anthony's got my sort of opinion where he says what gets me about the inquiries, public or behind closed doors, is that no one is brought to account, and this is infuriating that the inquiries don't do much. It needs to change. And actually, this hark back to what we were talking about before about councillors. We've got councillors in Great Aycliffe Town Council who have likened people going for a COVID vaccination to people being shipped to the gas chambers during World War II. And, there is nothing that can be done about that. And I think that and this thing, like Paul gave a list of all the inquiries that have produced findings and nothing's been done about it, and it just adds to this mistrust of the people in charge. It's like we constantly getting this message that they up there, they can do whatever they want, and us down here, you accidentally go for a walk with your mate and stand closer than 2 meters apart from each other, and you're going to end up with a fine. But this thing about the going on holiday thing, now I haven't watched this because I don't go on holiday anyway, so it wasn't really relevant information to me. But this idea that, is it right that you're going to get fined £5,000 for leaving the country, except if you've got a second home? Well, did I hear that right? I mean, what other message are we giving people other than we can do what we like, but you guys stay down in the gutter? It's absolutely horrendous. And I can't understand why people keep voting for it.
Thank you, Laura. Are you in solidarity with your husband here that we shouldn't be calling for an inquiry?
No, I think we should be calling for an inquiry. 100%, I would do that. I just wish that it would mean something, that something would happen. Because the thing is, I think the inquiry will just come up with the stuff that we already know has happened. It will just be there in black and white for us to see. We can list the failings of this government, but as everybody said already, and I think we all understand that as soon as this inquiry is done, we're going to go, right, well, that was nice. We'll file that away now. And nothing's going to happen until they start. I mean, they haven't even been held to account for the things they've done, like giving their contracts to their friends, the track and trace failure. I mean, we could sit here all night and go through all the things they've done that they should have been held accountable for, not least the amount of lies they've told. Nothing ever gets done.
Laura, would you bring in, like they have in America, a system of impeachment? We sort of forget the inquiries, let's impeach. I
mean, I guess you'd have to speak to Mark, one of our constant viewers who's like just knows everything about American politics. But why not? Like, if you're going to fail us this badly, yeah, okay, so we technically put them there, but they should be held accountable. They should remember that they're there because we put them there, and they're there to serve us, and they're not. They're doing a really bad job. So yeah, I'd love to see something like that come in.
Sort of. Paul,
can I just clarify? I don't have a problem with calling for an inquiry, and I don't have a problem with there being an inquiry. I just want there to be an outcome that is tangible and useful for people. That's all I care about.
Yeah, so it's outcome. Stuart, I've messed up the order of things because you're leading on the next topic. Have you got anything to say on the public inquiry?
Yeah, a couple of things. Is it the Labour Party that's driving this, or is it the families of the 120,000 people who've died? And is this finally the time where the national grief and loss and anger is enough that we actually start to demand proper outcomes to inquiries? Is this the tipping point?
And the second point, is that both points together?
Yeah.
Thank you. Chris Fox thinks we haven't been failed by the government. Well done, Chris. A brave comment to put on there. Respect for doing it. Absolutely true. And especially today, that we should think about the families of who've lost loved ones. And a year today, a year. Anyway, and I told you that on many things, because now, Stuart, I'm coming back to you again, because you're leading on the furlough scheme. The UK furlough scheme pays out millions to foreign states and tax exiles. What on earth is all this about?
Yeah, figures have come to light that show the kind of level of abuse, not just by, rich people within the UK, but, very wealthy parties outside of the UK using this system to their advantage. Quite disgusting levels. Some of the people involved include, the ruler of Dubai, 3 billionaires, and the British National Party, which is a funny one to be registered outside the country. That's a weird one. There's members of the Saudi royal family have put in claims for their members of staff, and these are some of the wealthiest people in the world who are taking advantage of a system that was put in place to protect the very poorest and weakest in this situation. And it's absolutely disgusting, let alone anything that's gone on, from within the country, and just shows you the absolute failure of these kind of blanket policies that don't go into kind of targeting who they're supposed to be helping.
Spot on, Stuart. On fire as usual, says James Summerall, and absolutely correct. Sam?
Wasn't paying attention.
Okay, thank you, because I want more time on the last one anyway. Laura?
I was also not paying attention.
That's good. I can take this. Oh, if you can be brief, we can have quarter of an hour on the last one, which is what I want to be talking about, really.
It's just... It's a deep worry. We saw at the very beginning of the crisis. This isn't new news. This is like, we've known this for a year. I'm sure I've mentioned this on the program before. We've had at the very start of the pandemic, when Tesco was open, I think they took 650-ish million from the government in a tax break and then paid it to shareholders. Let's look at where the money goes. Always look at where the money goes. There's nothing that has proven that we have trickle up or pumped up economics in this country more than this pandemic. The government puts money in, and it doesn't matter whether it goes in at the bottom or at the middle or the top, it always ends up in the hands of the richest. Throughout this pandemic, billionaires have increased their wealth by 26%. 26%, and they've already got billions. Now, there is a systemic problem. This isn't a coronavirus furlough thing. This is a systemic thing. This isn't just about furlough. There's so much wrong with our system, and we need to be looking at that system and addressing these issues, because if you want to generate a better economy, that money needs to stay within the economy. It needs to stay with those people. And all these people who argue stupid things like, oh, well, if you have to give more money to nurses, then that means that we won't be able to give more money to people who work in shops. Who do you think spends money in shops? Nurses, public sector workers. If you give those people who need to spend money to live some money, then you will create an economy that works for everyone. If that's how economies work, you give it to people who need to spend it. You don't give it to billionaires who will hide it offshore. That's that's just so basic. Such a basic thing, and I wish people would get their heads around this. Rich people don't need to be looked after. They'll be fine. Everyone else needs to have an economy that works for them.
Absolutely fabulous, Paul. Absolutely true. Okay, and the last topic of tonight, people, and this is the one that's hit the news, of course, recently, and sort of I bumped it up the order. Laura, crime and policing bill.
Yeah. What exactly do you want to know about it?
Well,
it's been fun.
Whether you agree with it or not, but start by telling us what it's all about anyway, because some people won't know what on earth we're talking about.
Right, okay, so it's the I'm going to get the name right for you, hang on. Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill. Now, this was it seems like it's coming back on the back of the Sarah Everard disappearance and subsequent murder and sort of the vigils and everything and protests that went with that. And that's just a case of opportune timing, I guess, depending on who you are. Actually, this was a conversation started by ministers following the Extinction Rebellion protests, because effectively they took over the streets and caused a few problems doing their protest. Traffic couldn't get
They're
where it
annoying.
wanted to.
Damn
Yes.
annoying.
Well, depending on your perspective, yes. So this is why they've been sort of looking at redrafting this bill. So at the minute, the police have got the power to put restrictions on anything that's deemed as serious public disorder, or anything that might cause serious damage to property or a serious disruption to the life of a community. They can tell people which routes they're allowed to take. They can do sort of bits like that, really. The new powers that we'll have under this bill are interesting, to say the least. They're quite woolly and vague in my thoughts anyway. They're vague enough to be sort of used in whichever way you feel that you should use them, and whoever is implementing these rules can go harsh or not. And I think it's not really good enough. The basic saying you can set start and finish times of any protest. You can set noise limits. You can also apply all of the rules to a demonstration by just one person. And I think there's a load of rules that are coming with it about how people should conduct themselves on a protest. And I think the most worrying part of that is that it's a crime to follow restrictions, to not follow restrictions that a protester ought to have already known about, even though the police haven't directly told them. So if a police officer said, well, you should have known not to do that, there's a £2.5 fine for you straight away. So it is really woolly, and they're basically just saying, oh, well, don't cause a nuisance. Well, who gets to decide what a nuisance is? And also, isn't that the fundamental point of a protest? It is to cause a nuisance. It's to cause and to show an outcry that you're not happy about something. If usual methods like, you're writing letters and you're talking to MPs and councillors, nothing's working, then comes protest. If you feel so passionate enough to go to the streets and protest on something, even just as one person with a megaphone saying what you believe, that is now potentially you in prison or with a £10,000 fine. The fines for the protests and the sentencing for protesting is so disproportionate to the actual action of protesting itself. And obviously there's the point that for a particular type of protest and refusal to leave, you can get 10 years in prison. You can't even get 10 years in prison for rape. You can't even get arrested and charged with rape in this country at the minute. It's less than 4% of all reported rapes that even get to court. Never mind the ones that don't get reported because people are too busy not wanting to report it because they know what the process is like. These are the things we should be looking at. The process and investigation of rape is so intrusive on the victim that most victims don't want to do it. They're the things we need to be changing, not how loud you can shout at a protest. So no, I don't agree with it. I think it's all a load of rubbish. Maybe they needed to make a few changes to make things a bit safer, to show support, but also care. I'm all for that. Nobody wants to see anybody getting hurt. But this just seems like a smack in the face and another rule by them, and the rest of us just have to follow. So yeah.
You can protest as long as it causes no inconvenience and we can just ignore you. Now, Sam, Leanne Powell, if you try to ban peaceful protest, don't be surprised when non-peaceful protests happen in response. Do you think that the police and crime bill actually caused the Bristol riots? Or do you believe the press that this was evil people taking advantage of the protests to be evil?
Well, I mean, it's really convenient now, isn't it, that people who are in support of the bill can go, well, look at these people who are against the bill. They're all violent criminals. And that's clearly not the case. Lots of people who are against the bill had absolutely no role at all in the riots in Bristol. And if you listen to people on the ground in Bristol, they say that the people who were involved in the violent disorder were a minority, that they were not native to Bristol. And so I obviously do not ever encourage anybody to do violence. But also, I appreciate there is a point where human beings are pushed to the limit and people do things that they might not do if they hadn't had 11 years of conservative austerity pushed on them, where all of their youth services have been cut, all of the policing's been cut, all of the jobs, there's no jobs for anyone. You go to apply for a job in McDonald's and there's like 600 applicants for one job and they're all graduates and you've got no chance of getting in. You know, we are in a really unhealthy point in our society right now. And I would say in a more healthy society, you have less riots. So let's look at how we do that on a holistic approach without specifically blaming a huge group of people for some very specific people's actions. You know, I don't think you can liken what happened in Bristol to Black Lives Matter, which some people have been. I'm not down with that, but I do think we have to kind of step back from the people. We have to step back from the active police officers who are on duty and look at the structure of policing and what it is for and what it should be doing, and step back from the individual rioters and look at our general society, and is that doing what it's supposed to be doing for all of our benefit, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, really good points. Stuart, it always amazes me that the Tories come across, and this has been made in the chat, the Tories are the party of law and order, but they have more riots on their watch than under Labour. And sort of, I mean, do you think that this is not really about the actual rules of the bill, but what Samantha was saying, it's about the structures of society? I mean, what's your take on the bill and what it's trying to do?
I mean, the bill clearly kind of incites a pushback against it, you know, no matter what form that is. And one of those forms that it could have taken was a riot. But I don't think that riot is completely about the bill. I think there's elements of, you know, a nation that's been screwed tight down. You know, we've been locked down, you know, grieving, big loss, young people with not a lot to do, unemployment going through the roof. You know, this isn't just about this, you know, quite awful bill. I think there's more bubbling over under the surface, and I think there wasn't any, you know, government forethought that what kind of pushing these measures through might actually unleash on the streets. I don't think that there was any conscious thought about what was going to possibly happen.
Thank you, Stuart. Spot on. I find there's so much anger in society at the moment. People are just angry, and you only need to start poking somebody. The police have found now on a number of occasions that they just needed to go in a bit heavy-handed and blew up in their faces because people were up for it straight away. Paul, last question to you. Jake Ratcliffe pointed out that what the Tories are saying is that there are lots of positives in this bill that Labour is voting against because they're voting against the bill. And I can't really remember any of them, but it's sort of do you not believe in stronger sentences for murderers and things like this, and rapists and things like that? It's sort of, I mean, do you see any positives in this bill at all? What's your reply to Paul Howell, who was defending it in the Newton News this week? And are Labour doing law and order a disservice by opposing a law which actually is just trying to tighten things up a bit?
Well, firstly, I'm going to say that I have no idea what the evidence is behind this. I've never seen any evidence that says that longer sentences deter any crime. There is no evidence that suggests that. Sentences don't deter, like long sentences don't deter crime. So if your job is to try and prevent crime, if that's what it's for, then it will not do that. You need to be doing other things. You need to be doing youth work. You need to be doing work in communities. You need to be making sure that you aren't creating a generation of starved people. You know, you've got to create improve people's life conditions so that they won't do crime. That is really, really fundamental. If you're talking about punishment, it's crime and punishment, isn't it? Is it crime and rehab, or is it crime and punishment? I think they're going down the crime and punishment route and saying, right, if you do something wrong, we want to punish you. But where's the punishment for other people? Where's the punishment for like people who've done all these massive contracts and given away public money to their friends? There's no thought of that. And what about violence as well? Does this deter violence? So you can get 10 years for pulling down a statue. And the statue that was cited, people were talking about the statue of Colson. What about the violence that man inflicted on slaves? What about those poor people who were herded into boats far away from the homes, died on the way over? What about that kind of violence? And people are saying, oh, well, we want to keep our heritage and things like that. Let's learn about the heritage. I'm all for empire heritage. I'm all for finding out exactly how horrific the treatment of those people were, because I think people would change their minds pretty sharpish if that was taught properly. So there's all these things, but I'm going to finish up here on a little story, and we all know this story because it was when Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament, and it's a little bit like Wizard of Oz, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. But so what we did is we did a protest, and I was a little bit naughty because I was one of the organisers of the protest, and I didn't tell the police. And we just went there with a few speakers and made some speeches, and the far right had got wind of it, or the alleged far right. Someone was saying the far right were coming. And people did turn up with a few flags and a few things that we've seen at their protests before, and there were no police there. So I said, just come over, listen to what we've got to say. We offered them an opportunity to get up and say something. They didn't have a clue what to do. They didn't have a clue what to do because there wasn't a line of police between us and them. Now, people have been talking in the chat about the police instigating violence, and we saw how they dealt with those women last week who were on a vigil. That wasn't a protest, it was a vigil. They were kneeling, hands behind their heads, and they were lifted up and thrown down and put in all these, like, they were in no way a threat. No way a threat at all, and the police instigated that. Now, I'm not saying, and let's say, well, it's not all police if we want to do that, it's not all police if we want to go down that route. But that is how they have already got enough powers before this. That's what they did to a vigil. What are they going to do now? So what would we be doing without these powers? We'd be paying poll tax. Women wouldn't be voting. All those protests that people have done over time would no longer be allowed. This is what we're after. This is what this government are trying to do. They're trying to take away people's right to change anything. It's their way or the highway. They control the media, and anyone who wants to change the narrative at all, you don't have an opportunity to do that anymore. And that will instigate violence, always.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And may I say, people, you've been brilliant as well. I've been watching your comments here. Lilith the Tories know what they're doing. What a lovely comment. My golly, there's something to talk about there. Mrs. Lemmy, I can't remember what you said. It was, I've just written Tories out. So to write it again. Can we pick it up, Sam? Can you find it? Sort of Mrs. Lemmy made a really good... oh yes, they're not angry. I said they're angry, and she said, well, they're not angry enough to vote the Tories out, which I thought was a really good point. And Paul Smith pointing out the massive disadvantage that this bill puts the GRT community under. Sort of really smashing points. Thank you for your input. Really brilliant today, people. Now, you know what happens is sort of we just wave bye-bye for 5 minutes. I go and fill up my water, have a chat with my wife. We play some music. We come back, and I try and keep quiet in the second half so I don't commit some vast indiscretion, and I let Sam run the show. Just to say how brilliant these people are, aren't they? It is just such a privilege every week sitting back and just watching them say these brilliant points. And thank you. You've been just as good today. See you in 5 minutes. God bless. Ta-ta.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say, and around the rear we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure, and around the rear we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first, and around the rear we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass pasaran, no pasaran, no pasaran today. No pasaran, no pasaran, no pasaran today. No pasaran, no pasaran, no pasaran today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pasaran here today.
People seem to be being caught unawares a little bit.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
We're back.
Hello.
We're back. Hello.
It's because we
Hello.
can't hear the music. It's sort of. I'm so sorry.
That's
Sam.
all right.
Hello. I just thought, because this is when if we do an action of any description, this is my official job. It's literally my job to be the most annoying person within earshot. So if I end up in prison, that's why. My mum's always been worried about me going to prison, and now I might actually end up there. Oh God, the screen went off and it was back. It's fine. So yeah, just any excuse to show off my megaphone, because I haven't been out recently. What with the pandemic? Yeah, it's just a lot of rubbish, isn't it? How can you possibly do anything without annoying people? I literally cannot exist without annoying people. I think I'm going to prison soon. Anyway, Paul wanted to say something first.
Yeah, so my real moment of the week this week. So I had not that wasn't a brilliant moment of the week with Left Horizons, but the real moment of the week is what's been going on in Wingate with a man named Sean Ivey, who's a friend of ours. He has had an awful attack on him for standing up against antisocial behaviour. He had his house burned down. He had his car burned out. He had his caravan burned out. And the community around the country, because he's an ex-Marine as well, came together and have raised £250,000 to get everything fixed. Which initially it was £2,000 to keep him, to put a roof over his head for a couple of nights until he can sort something out. But people have raised an absolute fortune for him, which is brilliant. We're working really, really hard in Wingate at the moment. I organised a meeting last Saturday, and it was really interesting what came out of it. So there were people who were looking at trying to do something that was for like a neighbourhood watch scheme and things like that, so we can look out for each other. But actually the things that people spoke about were, we need to have more for the kids around here, we need to have more community spirit, we need to be doing more for people. And it wasn't this vengeful, awful spirit about it. It was a really positive thing where people were saying, let's do something, let's make people proud of our village, let's make people proud of our surrounding villages and do something for them. And you just think to yourself, that's absolutely brilliant. So Sean's been a really inspirational figure this week. So and I've been very proud to be from the community of Wingate this week as well. Although we are still a little bit worried that we could be targeted at any time. So I've not really said this before, but we've been parking our car away from the house for a little while now because it happened to someone on our parish council a while back, and I'm on the parish council. People have been getting targeted. So these are the things that I think people don't really realise, that if you do that, if you put yourself forward into a position of being a local council or something, and we don't get anything, we don't get any kind of allowance for it. We're just trying to help people. And I know that the allowance is limited for county councils and stuff, so I'm not saying that like that one's any better than the other. I actually think there should be allowances so that people have time to do that and and spend a lot of time on the job, so it's not just people who've retired who can do it. That's a different point. These people who are volunteers are feeling like they're under threat quite a lot of the time. And then Sean sticks his head up, he pops his head above the parapet and stands up against antisocial behaviour, and that kind of thing happens. So, you know, when people were saying be nice a while back, and then no one was, or maybe it's time that like we should have a bit of respect for people who are willing to volunteer to help their communities and aren't in it for themselves. So, yeah. But anyway, big shout out to Sean.
Thank you, John.
I have a question, Paul, because what strikes me about it is when you're burning down somebody's house, that's not antisocial behaviour. I mean, that's full-blown crime.
Well,
And so when we think of antisocial behaviour, you think of children chucking snowballs at cars and sort of kicking cats and things like that. That's not nice. Or people whizzing round on quad bikes and doing donuts on the grass and ruining the grass. That's antisocial behaviour. But when you're talking about damage to cars, are we talking about children doing this, or are we talking about real criminals who are targeting community leaders? What's going on there? Where is this coming from? Such extreme acts.
Just by the way, there was an echo on my voice there, so I don't know if someone's got something coming through there. It's gone now, I think. But yeah. So what happened was, oh no, it's back. Someone got an echo? Don't know. Anyway, there were some people riding up and down on motorbikes, and they were flicking mud at some windows from the back tyres and that kind of thing. And Sean's challenged them. And then that night, his parents were broken into. Someone threatened them with weapons. And then he went and he made a video saying, look, you know, we're going to have to stand up to this. And then his house was burnt down. And it's not... It appears to be in response to him challenging antisocial behaviour. That's where it's coming from. It's not... It's not. We're not saying that the burning down of a house is antisocial behaviour. We're saying the response to him standing up to antisocial behaviour was to raise that level up and threaten him, and that appears to be what's happening. 2 people have been arrested, as far as I know, and there are 3 more being looked at and looked into, and so on. So yeah, but the positive thing about it has been the community response, and Sean unbelievably on Saturday morning, and this was before some money had been raised by then, and a really breathtaking amount for him, and he was saying, oh well, you know, I'm looking at his glass half full, everyone's coming together and we're going to do something good. And it's like, wow, it's a good attitude to have that. So let's hope something really does come out of it. Or well, if I've got anything to do with it, I will make sure that, for my part, we'll make sure that something good happens out. And then I know that the people who were on that meeting all feel exactly the same way. So some good's going to come out of this. And let's hope that we get back to a really good community spirit where we look after one another. Because it's a nice place, really. It's just you've got a few people, like anywhere, a few people can make it very difficult.
Yeah, let's just hope they do get charges brought against them, you know, we get the bad guys here, because that's just disgraceful. We had one, and Anne has mentioned about the quad bikes. We've got a huge quad bike problem in Shildon as well. We had one where it looked like, from reports that I received, a quad bike tried to drive down the path that joins Shildon and Aycliffe together along the railway line, and ended up in a collision with one of the fences, which ended up demolishing the fence. This lad ended up getting quite badly injured himself and going to hospital. But the debris that was left on the path caused a further accident with a cyclist the next morning, where a cyclist went into this demolished fence and ended up having to go to hospital himself, And what I don't understand is the entitlement of the reaction of some of the comments on social media afterwards were like, you don't be angry that there was a fence in the middle of the path because somebody got injured breaking that fence. Like, well, they shouldn't have been driving a quad down a path. They shouldn't have been, having a lot of this. Can't be angry at kids for doing antisocial behaviour when there's no youth clubs. Like, actually, we can, because there's a point where you're making a decision, and I managed to not throw mud at anyone's houses when I was growing up, despite there being no youth clubs. and the other thing is well, we all did it when we were bands. We all keyed people's cars and slashed people's tires and drove quads round and round and threw stones in people's windows and fired air guns at people's windows and broke them. No, we didn't. This is not the way that everybody behaves. Stuart?
Yeah. A couple of things where, because Paul touched on like allowances and what people think of the people who stand up for their communities, what people think about them. And last week when I went out litter picking, you stick your photos on Facebook, don't you? And then somebody had a go at me for wasting my time as a counsellor, a complete waste of 26 grand. What? I don't get paid 26 grand to be a counsellor. And obviously there's this idea of, what's going on. And I think that kind of plays into what happens when people try and stand up and do something good in their community. And when you were saying, Sam, we weren't all bad uns. I remember as a kid riding around on a moped that we bought for 20 quid, late into the night, and we took it up a BMX track until we smashed it in half. And that was a time when there was, youth centres. And I think back and I just wish that, somebody had actually spent some time with me and said, you know what, probably a bad idea. You're going to get yourself hurt.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the comments.
Anna made a good point when she says, "Have you seen the size of them?"
Yeah.
This is one of my big deals because we go on. You think that the antisocial behaviour that's being reported are sort of the 11, 16-year-olds, school pupils. And in fact, it's not. And sort of many 11, 16-year-olds are absolutely smashing. And so much of the drinking and the mess and the damage is being done by people who are into their 20s. And just and the other thing is very often by people not from the town. And sort of in Newton Acre, we're finding that a lot of the people who are doing the damage in these late night sessions where they're all gathering in large numbers and causing havoc, they're coming from sort of Sedgefield and Bishop Auckland and far afield. I mean, not even the next town. It used to be that they came from Chiltern and Shildon, but so now they're coming from further afield, Stockton, and you just think there's something more off here than just naughty children who are not being properly brought up. That's not the issue. Now we do have naughty children in Newton Acre. They do throw mud at cars and they are behaving very badly indeed. But sort of there's another layer of it altogether. And Paul, in answer to my first question, I can absolutely understand that if you were to cross some of these very large, very frightening, very intimidating people, that in fact you might find a criminal response. And it shows for me that antisocial people say, what are you going to do about antisocial behavior? Well, first of all, we need to understand that it is a multifaceted problem. There's lots of problems going on there, which we just lump together into, and of course, all the figures are up at the moment, because if you broke COVID rules at all, you're in there as well. And also all those adults who park on the grass and leave rubbish let the rubbish pile up in their yard, they're all in the figures as well. And it's just sort of, it needs a lot of careful thoughts at the moment, because it is the problem of our societies at the moment.
Craig Furlough says, it's really simple. Give working class people more money and the economy will boom. Yes, I agree. This is what Paul was saying about, who do you think spends money in shops? Nurses spend money in shops. Give nurses more money. Give everybody more money. Honest of it. Oh dear. Mark says trickle-down economics has failed and never works. Trickle up is what works. You give the poor money in the morning and the rich will have it by tea time. I mean, that's the facts, isn't it? Where are the poor people going to spend their money? Probably in quite large businesses which are owned by very rich people who will find a way to. But this is another argument for helping smaller businesses, isn't it? Because we know that smaller businesses are more likely to buy from other smaller businesses within the community, so you're more likely to keep your money within your community. But unfortunately, market forces do not enjoy giving small businesses fair opportunities.
Because it's competition, isn't it? They're not going to give the competition money. I get very angry about this, because the fact is that the greater the crisis, the more the rich get richer out of it. And they really just fix things. I mean, sort of these huge crises that reduce us to poverty and despair, in fact, they're their opportunity. And they actually create them in order to bring them about. There's the deep evil in this.
Chris Hood's brought up a thing about the whip. He says, what are the panel's thoughts on the whip? John mentioned that the Labour Party councillors at Durham County Council agree to vote as a block with the whip. What if this doesn't necessarily reflect the thoughts, the thoughts of their constituents? So it's a really good point, and it is something that every councillor has to sort of weigh up and think about really seriously. But like the way that John explained it earlier was a really good way of explaining it, I think, because the whip is not something that's imposed on the Labour group. It's something that's agreed within the Labour group. So you've got a much better chance of persuading your 70 people in your party about what you need to do for your community than you have of how many councillors are on Durham County Council in total, roughly?
126.
106, 160.
126.
126.
The Labour group's about 70.
So you've got a chance, you've got a choice. You either convince the whole council to vote the way you want them to vote, or you just concentrate on convincing this smaller but very influential bloc. And I think that's what we need to remember. And unfortunately, you won't win them all. Like John said, the whole point of the Labour Party, on the back of our membership cards, it says we believe we achieve more together than we achieve alone. So you won't win every battle, but overall, you will be part of a group which create better conditions for your community. Would you like to say anything on that, John?
Yes, I mean, basically to agree. I've been having a thought about this recently. Was it Chris Hood who brought it up? Sort of, and it's not going to be a popular thing that I'm going to say, but when you get interested in the community and you start running a youth club, or you get involved in a community centre, and you meet councillors and you think, I could have more influence and I could help my people more if I became a councillor. And so what you do is you become a town councillor. And when you get there and you find that you're a town councillor, sort of you went to support your youth club to get more for your youth club. When you get there, you find that you're a town councillor for the whole town, not just for your little local community. And suddenly you've got the responsibility of making decisions for the whole town. And sometimes you find yourself going against what was best just for your club. If you'd have only cared about your club, you wouldn't have voted like that. But it's quite clear that the town has to do something. And it's the same at county. You think, I'll go and I'll support Newton Aycliffe about that bloody county council. I get them, so I'm going to shout Newton Aycliffe. So, and you get there. And somebody says, we've got £25 million regeneration money. And we're thinking of putting it into Hordern. And then you go and you take a drive round Hordern and you think, my God, I'm sorry. The town centre in Newton Aycliffe will have to wait. This needs something doing now, because your responsibility is the whole of the county. And I have a problem with this, Chris, as well, because the people who are standing for election, you will find, you talk to them, they don't understand this. It's all about what I'm going to do for me and my little community when I get elected. Some of them quite tiddly little things, like I'm going to deal with double taxation. And sort of when you get to the county council, you become a county council, and your job, your role is to look at the whole county and to do the right thing by that. And you need people electing who have that broader opinion. That doesn't mean you don't care about Newton Aycliffe. It doesn't mean that you don't fight Newton Aycliffe's corner. And it does mean that in every bloody discussion, you're there making sure that Newton Aycliffe's not being done down. But you have bigger things to do than just look after the town centre. There's bigger things to be done.
Can I just say, I think Craig's making a few good points in the chat. I think he's basically saying that there's greater consequences for breaking the whip at county level than there is at parliamentary level. Mm-hmm. And you're basically out if you break the whip, aren't you? At county level on a matter of conscience. And I think that needs to be considered as well. But from my point of view, you need to argue your corner in the group, and then go with a decision if that's the democracy, if that's what's been decided by the group. I think you've got to do that. But for me, sometimes I think there's a little bit too much trust in what people are being told by the officers. I feel like at county level, it'd be great to see people making a political decision and then going to officers and saying, this is our political decision, go make this happen. And they might say, oh, no, we can't do that. And you go, well, sorry, but you're going to have to make it happen because that's our political decision. And from what I hear, it's sometimes a little bit the other way around. Like, this is what's achievable, this is what's plausible. And then the vote comes from the fact that it's a plausible thing rather than this is our political decision. Because, look what Boris Johnson's doing at the moment. He makes a political decision and he tells the civil servants to go and do it. And that political decision might be disastrous, but they've got to go and do it, and that's the way our democracy works. And I would hope to see a little bit more of that at county level. I think the county have done some really, really good stuff, and I would like to see that to be more, as I say, everything being a bit more of a political decision, because we were talking earlier on about voting for party or person. If you're voting for person, then maybe, I don't know, you can't have a political direction. But if you're voting for party, you can have a political direction. So have a political direction.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Chris Fox made a good point, even though I disagree with him, about the NHS rollout of the vaccine. He was saying the NHS has done a very good job of rolling out the vaccine. So we should be happy with the government. We don't need an investigation into how they've handled the coronavirus pandemic, and he got challenged on that. But he said, but what you're saying is the government has no, because they were saying the NHS did the good job, not the government. So he said, so you're saying the government has no involvement with the NHS? They don't support and provide the finances. When the NHS is doing badly, it gets blamed on the government. But when the NHS is doing well, people say, well, it's the NHS, it's not you. I think that's a really fair comment. Again, like I said, I disagree. But, that's clearly how how some people think. It's how Chris thinks. And I mean, it's hard for me because I cannot consider being in this world right now and looking around myself and thinking things are all right. I'm looking around myself and really worrying about how badly things are and how badly things have been run, how much things are being absolutely cut to the bone. It's nice to know that there are still people out there who do look around themselves and think that things are okay. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, we had this discussion about Keir Starmer being too soft in opposition. I found this really interesting in all of the phone banking I've been doing, because one of the questions is, how do you think Keir Starmer is performing? And literally there are two opinions people have of Keir Starmer, that he is either too soft in opposition or that he needs to leave the government alone and let them do their job. I think it's really interesting. You don't seem to be talking to anybody who is in the middle of those two quite extreme positions about Keir Starmer's opposition style, let's say. Do you have something to say about that, Paul? You look like you.
I always have something to say, but Laura hasn't spoke for a little while. I don't know.
I
was just.
Laura wants to be in bed.
I was just going to say,
not quite yet.
Stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get run over. It's far too much centrism going on. Centrism is like kind of it depends. Sometimes like centrism comes from a place of compromise, and I think a lot of people think centrism's compromised. But if you start from the compromised position, your only compromise is to go towards your opponent. So I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to triangulate and go, right, I'll go for the compromised position, bam, I'll go there. And then everyone from all sides are saying this is terrible. Whereas like if he'd have started from an actual position and then been pulled and then said, actually, well, I'll have to give and take a little bit here, then the outcome might be a little bit more centrist. But starting from a compromise is just ludicrous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I do think there's something psychologically happening with people while we are in the crisis. I think there is a lot of people who feel uncomfortable attacking the government during a crisis. Whether that's right or healthy or not is another thing altogether. But what people don't understand is that opposition is part of the system. When you're opposing the government as a Labour Party member or as the leader of the opposition, you're not doing it to be nasty. You're doing it because we exist in a system that has an adversarial system of politics, which is supposed to provide a check and a balance to itself. So it is our duty to scrutinise what the government does at every opportunity, because that's how we keep each other honest. But if we're not doing that, then we're not doing that. That's my opinion. I just think it's an ethical imperative. It's the way our parliamentary system is set up. That's why there are two sides of the house. It's not a circle. It's not a love heart. This is not RuPaul's best friend race. It's an adversarial system of politics. And I understand how some members of the public don't like that very much because they want the people who are in charge to get on and be in charge. But it's just not the way our system works.
I think Dan, if I can come in on there is an aspect of double standards here, in as much as when it's the Labour County Council and people are criticising them, nobody's against that. They think it's genuine, good criticising, good, stick it to them, they deserve everything they get. And everybody's very happy to see a Labour County Council criticised. If Labour then start to criticise the government, it just plain scoring. Sort of disloyal, and for goodness sake, you're just trying to make political capital out of it. You're disgusting. And there is a sense in which everything Labour does is bad, and everything that Labour's opponents do is good. And that's just a fact of life, but it does get wearing sometimes.
Vonnie's starting a RuPaul's Drag Race discussion now. Bimini was robbed. Bimini for Queen. Anyway, none of the people know. Anyway,
Stuart will know, won't you?
Do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah.
I feel bad because obviously in the past RuPaul has not been great on trans inclusion, so I feel really bad about enjoying RuPaul's Drag Race. But I'm looking at everybody else. I'm not looking at Ru. I block him out and I look at everybody else. I just love seeing all the British drag queens. I just think that they're an excellent asset to our nighttime economy and fantastic. What do you think, Stuart?
You can kind of plot the changes in RuPaul's political life, as you know, early doors activist in the gay community, up till the point where he became a very rich person, and a lot of his opinions changed. And you can kind of see that in people like J.K. Rowling and other people who have become rich over a period of time, and you see their opinions shift. And RuPaul isn't immune to it just because he was, a high-profile activist in his day.
Tim doesn't know who it is. It's that person who, I think I'll try and do it in Tim language. That person who did a duet of "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" in the early '90s with Elton John. Not the Kiki D version, but they did re-record it. You might remember that. Drag queen.
Supermodel of the world. Yeah. So many things.
Anyway, I have to apologise to Leanne because apparently she hadn't seen it and I just spoiled it for her.
Can I just say that
I can get on with this political programme. There will be no RuPaul Drag Race spoilers here.
Can I just say that, Laura, you're getting an awful lot of love and concern on the sort of... So you're clearly on the verge of death, but sort of...
yeah, my mum's messaged us as well. It's like, Laura, you don't look well.
Don't be brave, knowing that everybody was really worried.
Thank you, everyone.
Which
I just need a good night's sleep, that's all.
Yeah, we should wind up anyway because this is now I'm almost in my 5th hour of Zoom this evening. So yes, we should almost also not Danny LaRue, Tim.
And we know that you're saying it in a nice way, by the way. You sound very caring. You don't come across as being nasty. Okay, so don't worry. You sound caring. And also Tim language. I know Tim language because I speak it as well. It's got to be through musical icons. I think that would be the way into the world for us. But he's a Danny LaRue fan. So there we go.
Apparently my computer's not plugged in. I might go off any second. Sorry.
We're all going off any second. Let's unplug. It's been lovely seeing you all. We've got Vonnie's put the clip for the Elton John and RuPaul clip in the chat.
Classic.
So is now apprised of the people we're talking about. Thank you, Leanne. She says, brilliant show again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye. Don't forget to be a member and like, share and subscribe and all that kind of stuff.
Night-night.
Thank you, sir.
with the red flag flying in.